This podcast shares personal accounts of near-death experiences. These stories reflect individual perspectives and are not offered as medical, scientific, or professional advice. Some content may be sensitive, so listener discretion is advised. Hi, my guest tonight is Bill Letson, a retired fire captain who had a profound near-death experience in 1994. That journey led him to explore shamanic traditions and ancient wisdom, uncovering powerful insights about who we are and where we're headed. Bill now shares how NDEs and ancient teachings point us toward a new golden age of connection and awakening. Hi, I'm Katie. Joining me today is Bill Letson, a retired fire captain who had an incredible near-death experience in 1994. And I'm excited to have you with us today, Bill, because your story I've heard and watched on so many different podcasts. There's so many interviews with you out there on the internet. Your story it really stuck with me. And I just so happy that you decided to join me today. And also thank you for your service too. Being a fire captain in California, I can't imagine doing that job that you did. So just thank you for your service to your community. Please just share with me a little bit about you, before your experience happened, and I'll let you take it from there.
Okay. Thanks, Katie, for having me. That was a wonderful introduction. And as far as this, service thing, I was just an airhead surfer, and firefighting was a really good way to continue with that career because you don't have to grow, firemen do not grow up. Anybody who knows them, stop into the fire station and hang around for a while. It's just a boys club, and the bell rings and they go out and do good things. It's a fabulous job. And the risks and the, psychological trauma, I guess, it's worth it because it's, you're helping others. So let's see. So I was a normal person. I know that mostly I'm not considered that anymore, but I was normal in my life and wonderful life, everything perfect, and got into firefighting in my teens. And I was on Santa Barbara County in 94, and there was a Beijing flu, and I got exposed. We're helping this lady. Most people can repeat the details of that story by now. And she turned out good, and I got sick. And a few days later, I was in the hospital, and, this is really normal. Things don't go right with medications and stuff. It's really normal, and I don't have any ill feelings about any of that. But I was, sent to the edge, hung out there for hours, and at some point during that night, in intensive care, I left my body. So I found myself back to what we all are, just these infinite, energetic, eternal beings. And I was flying through this sea of stars. There was a deep black purple background, and there was all these stars, and they were parting, and it felt like I was in space. The orbs, energetic beings, they were all reaching out and touching me somehow, and everything was acceptance and love and welcoming. And I never felt like that in my life or since. And that's a testament to what we're doing here. We're all cut off from that wonderful home, and we're here to prove to ourselves that we are becoming peaceful and loving and full of joy and full of kindness. That's what we're supposed to demonstrate to ourselves. And when we do that, we're demonstrating it to everyone else because we're all connected. I mean, it sounds really confusing, but it's the universe experiencing itself. And so I'm flying through this incredible homecoming. Orbs are just parting, and it felt like somebody was pouring honey all over my brain and was running down through all my nerves. It was just like my eyes were just rolled back with bliss, and I was, functioning, but I was like, how can I feel this good? It was just continuous. And as I was cruising along, I was like, man, that was really rough duty where I just was being here on Earth, being Bill. And I was thinking, how did I fall for that? That was such a really good trick that I was this, this guy and had this whole story, family and, aspirations and history, and none of it was still there. It was like it was a dream and it was fading really fast. And going back to my body was out of the question. It was like a banana peel to me. It was like I got peeled out of there. I was crammed in there. I got free of it, and I was back to who I really was. This huge expanded awareness that was flying through space. And I cruised along for a while, and I was like, this is so cool. This is awesome. I love this. My thoughts were nothing was impossible. Information was just flooding in like crazy. Formulas and whatever you thought about was just instantly you had all this info. And then all of a sudden I wasn't in that place. I've said this every time, I was in a room with indirect lighting. And, anybody goes back 10 years and looks at some of these things, I've said it every time, it was indirect lighting. And in the last year or so, I started like looking at that, and, there was no light fixtures. There was no on-off switch. There was no lighting. Everything was lit. I was in the light. And within that light was a room, and right in front of me were beings. And they were these three short little hooded guys, and they were super happy to see me. They were bouncing around, and they came bouncing forward and just on me with questions. How was it? What can you tell us? And giggling and smiling. And I wasn't afraid of them. I didn't see demons or, anything scary at all. I saw friends, and one of them came forward and he looked me up and down, and he turned to the other two. He somehow sized me up, and he turned to the other two and said, he doesn't remember us. And they thought that was hilarious. They just started giggling, and I was confused, and I was just like, well, guys, give me a second. I just got here, and this is incredibly strange for somebody like me. And they thought that was hilarious. And then in the background, there was this tall, wispy guy, and he had this spin to him. He was like a sliver of a person with energy spinning around him. And he came forward, and that energy just enveloped me, and I felt like I was going to fall to my knees and break down crying because it was so much love. And so not too much was going on, there was a little back and forth stuff. All he did was chuckle, and he could tell he was super proud of me and loved me, and all the little guys did was bounce around him and giggle like little kids. And then so I was taking this in, and I said, okay, well, got to get out of here. This is like a medical facility or something. I asked him, I said, "Will you guys, want to do that thing? Would you flash my life before my eyes, or run through it, or you guys want to start that?" And everybody just cracked up. And he thought that was hilarious. He chuckled, and because it was like I was a little kid that was trying to take over, a little toddler. Then he just said, sure, let's do that. How do you want to start? And, that right there lets you know that we're not judged, and nobody has this incredible power over us to do horrible things to us or anything. Those things don't exist. Those emotions of fear and anxiety and regret, none of that goes with you. I didn't have any of that while I was there. And so I started talking, just told some stories about the Park Service job and a couple of other things. And then he just said, okay, that's enough. And he said, time to go back. And that just blew my mind. I was like, dude, what? Go back? I'd forgotten about Bill, and I forgot about my life here, and I had a perfect life and a wife and family, and people depended on me and friends, and all of it meant nothing. It was like it was an illusion or a game or a trick. It's like an amusement park. We come in here. It is not understandable because we're part of the park. We're projecting our awareness through this avatar, and the avatar has all kinds of energies driving it. You can look at your birth chart, and it's like looking at a hand of cards. You can tell exactly what your motivations in life are going to be. And it was all set up for the experience. And I knew that. I knew that it was just a house of cards. And the house of cards just fell down, and reshuffle the deck and start over. And that's how I felt. So I made up all these things about why I didn't have to go back. And, I told him he didn't understand. It's really hard there, and I don't want to go back. And he was cool, and he just kind of came forward, and he goes, all right, come on, you're going back. You got things to do, and they're important. And so the room started coming apart as he stepped into me with his energy, his intention, his thoughts of me going back. That's all it took. And my place there in that facility ended, and I went to a new vibration, a drop in frequency, and I came back here. And when I got close to my body, it didn't feel good at all, because all of what's here on Earth, it's very heavy emotions. It's all getting loaded back up. And, that's it's like a dump truck full of problems just being dumped back on you. That is why nobody wants to come back. And that is why when they wake up, they're mad or they're upset. And maybe they're upset for years, because the powerful illusion of this place is poured back into your experience. And it's just crushing. And a lot of people out there are suffering, and just know that you came at a time when the crushing is set on 11. The harsh emotions are really set high, and you're a super stud to be here now. All of you, the whole universe is watching. So anyway, I was back in my body, and a nurse came by. I was pissed, and I absolutely believe there are no accidents, synchronicities. I wanted to know why I had to come back here, and she put her hands on my shoulders, looked me in the eye, and said, "You're back with us, and you need to get over that." And I never forgot that. I was like, okay, I'm Bill again. I just got anchored. I'm Bill again, and that was something else. I'll find out more about that later, but I'm here now, and I have a purpose. And so I took it from there, and unlike a lot of indie ears, I started talking immediately. It was a super strange story. It was a super incredibly weird experience to be there with aliens, or whatever you wanted to call them. And that didn't seem to matter to me. It was real, and it was the truth. And so I just started talking about it. And I eased up on my family, because they thought, that overnight in a coma state, something happened to my brain. So I stopped talking there. And then after a week or so at work, I kind of got the word that, people were starting to wonder about me. And so I stopped talking there. But I always knew it was cool, and I didn't have any hard feelings towards anybody that I couldn't tell the story from every mountaintop. I didn't worry about it. I didn't react to it. I don't know. I just went on with life. I understood that I'm doing something here. He told me, you have to go back. You have things to do. And it's like, all right, dude, just do them. So that's how I lived every day. And I didn't let the big disappointments in life, I didn't really buy into them, because I knew they weren't real. And I just kept my chin up and kept going. And I think that's why, I didn't fall into all the problems, the pitfalls that are so available to all of us. And so, I kept it quiet for about 15 years. A couple of guys have called me recently and said, you told this story late at night out on the fire line. Guys are looking at the stars, they're talking about death or whatever, and you start up with the story, and everybody just goes quiet. and this one guy called me, and he said, when your video started coming out, people started talking. I told them, he told that story when the time was right. He told it 25 years ago. He told that story in the middle of the night, and I remember it. And he said, the reason I remember it is because I know you, your brother firefighter, and I know you weren't lying. You weren't playing around. You were telling a true story that had no place in the world at the time. So anyway, I retired in 2010 and was screwing around, having a wonderful time retiring. And then I started going to Costa Rica and looking for answers, because I saw this video called DMT, The Spirit Molecule by Rick Strassman. And what he did at the University of New Mexico is he injected volunteers with DMT. And DMT is something that our pineal gland makes naturally. And at night, it drops a little bit on your brain and we leave our bodies and we soul travel, this third eye thing. And then when we die, at the time of death, the pineal gland splashes a whole load of DMT on your brain and it rockets the soul out of the body. And when you get close to death, it activates. And that's what the near-death experience is. And that's what the shamans do with ayahuasca. It's very different, but that's what they're doing. That's what Rick Strassman was doing with his volunteers. He was injecting DMT, high-dose DMT, and they were going to a facility, like a clinic, and seeing 3 short little happy guys and a taller wispy guy. And I didn't see that part in the video, but for some reason, I read the book because I liked Rick Strassman. I thought, I don't know, there was something about him. And so I bought the book, which nobody ever does. You never buy the book after you watch the movie, or usually not. And when I got to chapter 13 and 14 called Contact Through the Veil, I saw these same guys in the reports from his volunteers that they were seeing these same joyful, happy little munchkins and a taller guy that seemed to be in charge, a wispier guy. And everybody was happy and friendly. And when I read that, it blew my mind. So I started looking for an opportunity to get with a credible shaman. And I was, running around Costa Rica surfing and screwing around with people I met and stuff. But I was always had my ear to the ground for a credible shaman. And I was staying at this place in Nassau, and the lady that ran it said, we're going to have a ceremony out in the jungle, and Taito Juanito is coming from the Amazon, and he's really credible. And I was like, I'm in. And so I did that a few times. I don't recommend it, but because it's like you're being pulled out of your body. A near-death experience, you're invited on the other side to look around. You're invited to have this experience, and then when you get back, figure out what you're going to do with it. Are you going to look inside at what that was all about, or are you going to bury it? And most of us don't look inside. And I thought the DMT was, drinking ayahuasca was the way to go, to reunite with those guys. But it's really a hard thing because you're yanked out, and there you are in this other realm, looking back at yourself from the perspective of the higher self and the soul, bouncing between these awarenesses. And you don't even know what, people mostly don't know in the morning what happened to them. They just know that was really profound. So I did that a few times. And then there was this village down in Costa Rica that was in a blue zone, really place that's really set up deep in the nature. The closer you get to nature, the closer you get to the supernatural. And I didn't know all this, but I liked going there, and I would go for weeks or months and kind of do their thing with silence and the way they ate and the water they drank. And after a while, after several trips, something opened. I could have all these things that I see now. I went there for years, 3 or 4 years. These guys are very close to Native Americans, and they do things like sweat lodge. So, wood from the fire in the sweat lodge is energy from the sun being re-released, and the steam from the water is, very divine thing. Everything's very natural and has meaning, and it all fit for me. And the closer you get to that, the closer, like I said, the closer you get to the natural world, the closer you get to the supernatural world, and things just open up.
I really like that a lot. I mean, especially in this day and age where we are a society that is so sucked into technology and, our phones. It's a great thing because we're able right now to have this conversation, and share it with people. And if I had been able to listen to your story, I mean, it just really inspired me. So it's a great thing. It's there, I guess, for a reason, isn't it? But I like that you said it's so important to be close to nature. And I think that a lot of us are missing that, not taking the time to do that. So
Yeah, the whole thing with earth and fire and water and air, that's supposedly it describes a physical world, but I think it describes us. And we've got the fire of the sun, our home, the spark of the other side, that is us, and it's coiled at the base of our spine. And then water is this interdimensional, multidimensional being with memory. And if you bless this water with good intentions and stuff, just we're 99% water, you just fill yourself up with the potential to reconnect with home. And still the minerals, the earth is this crystal connection back to home. Crystals are very powerful and they're in our DNA. And then the air is our breath. If you follow Joe Dispenza on Gaia,
I
it's
sure
a free
do.
thing.
Yes.
It's a free thing, and if you just start that breathing thing alone, the breaths where you bring it in and hold
Mhm.
it first thing in the morning and drink structured water and look towards the rising sun, your life will change. It will completely change.
I love looking for rocks and minerals, and, I had always been kind of a skeptic about when they talked about crystals having healing powers until I had my experience, with astral projection, like I had told you before. I just kinda skeptical about yeah, about those things, but there's I mean, since then, it's just opened me up to I'm with it. I'm on that train, and I truly believe there's something about being out there in nature. I love finding rocks, and there's and something about water, and I think it's interesting, so many NDEs, people describe, seeing, like a river, things flowing, water. It's a lot of nature, it's a forest, so, like you said, there's like, it's us, and I think it's Neil, deGrasse Tyson, I hope I said his name right. I remember watching a video of him saying, we're made up of, like, literal stardust, and, so just pretty profound, and I was trying to think of some questions I wanted to ask you, and I know you've been asked this before, but before you had this experience, did you did you know about I mean, had you heard about other near-death experiences? Were you skeptical to any of that, or were you I mean, hey, you were surfing, so you're just enjoying life and maybe didn't think about those things, I don't know.
No, I didn't give them any thought. My thoughts were, you're here for a while, do your best, and then you leave. And I was raised Catholic, so there's a whole lot of guilt and shame associated with that, and it's kind of off-putting. And there's a lot of structure to it. And, I went through all the motions and made my parents happy and stuff, but I wasn't, you weren't. Where I found God was in nature, camping and surfing and backpacking, and I became a ranger and then, wildland firefighter. So I was sleeping in the dirt, looking at the stars mostly, and I was right at home. And there weren't any questions, deep, profound spiritual questions. I didn't have any.
Listening to, other NDEs, have you heard some of the same things that compare to your story? And, uh, I think it's interesting you said since your experience, you were hearing some of those similarities in, like, that book that you were reading, like, with those little hooded guys. Did that just give you kind of goosebumps when you heard that?
Well, oh, yeah,
Yeah.
Goosebumps?
Yeah.
It was way beyond Goosebumps. I literally dropped the book
Did you
and
really?
yeah, and I went outside and I walked around and I was, we're out in the country and there's a lake and I was looking at this sky. I was like stunned and I was like, what is going on with this place we're in? And how can this be? How can this guy using this DMT go to where I was? And all of a sudden, my story wasn't just something that everybody threw dirt on. It was absolutely real. I always knew that, but if everyone in the world is telling you that was a dream or whatever, you kind of put it in that category. But yeah, after reading that book, I walked around. I didn't pick that book up for a week. It sat where I dropped it. And I walked around and I recommend this, just go inward. And at the end of the week, I was like, well, apparently I don't have all the facts about what is going on here. And that's when I went looking. I started traveling to an area where I could drink DMT without worrying about breaking the law.
Mhm.
And
Right.
that, I learned that that was going on down there, and it was like, okay, well, I'll go surfing and I'll look for property because I want to, build a house down. I had all these stories, but I was always searching. I was always being led. I was always being led, and I was just going with the flow, and it all unfolded. It's really an amazing story, and we all have an amazing story about how our lives were led into our adventures, and all of us, we're all the same, equally important. And when I was in that village, it's called Pachamama. Everybody would go into silence every night and go to this big temple, and they'd all walk up the trail to the temple and in silence, and they'd go into the temple in silence, head down, 300 people. And, I thought, man, this is a culty cult here, and and I was like this kind of worried guy, and I'd kind of sneak around and look in the windows and, look in the where they just let me do my thing. Nobody pushed me. And pretty soon I was going to silence with them. And then I was going on a silent retreat, where you be quiet for a week or two. And then they have a lot of other eye gazing. They have an eye gazing retreat.
Yes, that was I am sorry to interrupt you. That is something I heard you talk about in one of your other interviews, and that I've heard it other places too, the eye gazing, and that just blew me away. I mean, your experience with it.
They know things in this village. They know things. They don't talk a lot. They know things. They'll put you in a position for you to experience things and, you know, in and find some spirituality in the world. And, I was just going with the flow because they're all nice people. So yeah, you get in this group. It was like, I don't know, 50 or 60 people. You're together for 3 days. You sleep outside in, you got a pad and you're in a big group. And during the day, you do a bunch of meditation things and dance things. And throughout the day, you keep switching partners and you're doing this eye gazing thing. All the mirrors in the village are covered. Mirrors are mirrors are very mystical, and so all the mirrors are covered, and you don't shave or anything for days. And so anyway, the last night of this, we had all these things. You're eating properly, and you're in silence when you weren't in these eye gazing things. And then the third day, they did this thing where they turned the lights off after the sun went down, and we kept going, but they turned the lights off. And then I was sitting with this guy, and all of a sudden his face just started rearranging, and clear as day, and like a Picasso. And I was looking at him going, what the hell? And then it would all sort of came together, and it was a completely different face. And I was sitting you're not supposed to talk or anything. And I was sitting there going, dude, I have no idea what's going on. But yeah, and then it was like turning the pages of a book, and then another face would come up, and it would be a female. And these weren't pictures. They were personalities that were alive. They were reacting to me looking at them. They were looking back or smiling, or, mostly they were happy, and sometimes they were trying to talk, and then we would switch partners. And I had this girl that was a really nice woman in the village, and she had all these wonderful faces of just happy females. They were all females, and they were just one after another, and they were really expressive, like a dancer and like a singer. It was amazing. And then there was this other thing that happened, and then we broke down, and I told my buddy, because people could hear that there was like this disturbance over in this corner, because I was going, I can't believe what I'm looking at. And the person would be saying, well, tell me, who are they? And all I came up with was they were past lives, and they're held on our soul. All the information about that life is held on our soul. A lot of people talk about this. It's a living, even our personality here on earth, it never dies. It's always held in the information. The person, Bill, is always held on that soul and all his memories. And then my buddy was like, what's going on? I said, man, we need to get away from here and get to the bottom of this. And he goes, let's go. And, we weren't supposed to do that, but we snuck off. Everybody in the group was like, "What is going on with those guys?" And we got off by the side, and I go, "Just give me a second." And we like, you just let go, kind of, and boom, there's a new face, and he's talking. And I came all the way up to him, and he's like, "Tell me, what's he saying?" I said, I can't hear him, but he's talking incessantly. It's like he's wants to tell his story or something." And I was like this far away. And I was looking, and I was like, "Try slow down. What are you trying to tell me?" I'm talking to a ghost, and I should have run screaming into the jungle,
Mhm.
fearful. And I wasn't afraid at all. It was like I just felt so, I don't know. I just felt so happy that I was seeing this because it wasn't possible. We don't know anything about it. And we have thousands of lives, and they're all stored on our soul. And we're in a current life now. And, the story of Sybil had all these 23 personalities that would come forward, that wasn't a hoax. The current Sybil did not have the rest of the operation under control, and they would come forward. Um, Past personalities would come forward into the now. And, that's just, we can't really get our head around that at all. And there's other people that talk about this. Osho talked about it in the art of the ecstasy of meditation, I think it's called. It's
Mhm.
chapter 19. He talks about doing this eye gazing with yourself in a mirror. And that is not for the faint of heart because, you light a candle and you're in a dark room and you do it half an hour a day for, a week. And after a couple of days, you're going to see past lives. Um, and they're not all human. And that is just so trippy for me to even talk about. If you take us, we're like fractals. We're humans coming out of humans, and it goes on forever. And way up the line somewhere that we don't understand, we're all one being, experiencing themselves through this whole lineage. And this is why ancestors are so important, and their consciousness survives. It's all around us. It's fantastic story. Um, we don't really have that story anymore, but when we do, human beings are going to be so happy in their daily life, just happy enough just to be collecting water, knowing that there's this, our ancestors are all around us, our family that's gone on and family that's to come forward is all around us, always cheering us on. And when we get that knowing that we're not alone and we're not abandoned and we're not forgotten, when we understand that, our lives become incredibly rich.
I love that, and I can't remember who said it before. I've heard someone describe it's like they're they're there all the time. It's almost like we are on, a radio frequency, and we can just tune into this one. And sometimes we're able to tune into others like you have. If we just can, you know, get ourselves into some very calm state and raise our vibration, just doing some of those things. And there's practices you can do. But I think that should hopefully be reassuring to people to just know that, you know, that nobody's ever really gone. Uh, and I do believe in the, past lives and reincarnation. It really interests me. I've read some people talking about how we're living lives simultaneously too, at the same time. Multiple
Yep,
reality type stuff. And
that's crazy.
to people who just roll their eyes or just think that this is crazy, I try to say to those people, I guess, that will listen to me. To me, it's like, I mean, you just think about how limited this physical body is in this brain. You were shown in your experience, all of this information was downloaded and it was incredible. Maybe you weren't able to bring it back here because this body just doesn't allow, doesn't
Yeah.
support. Our brains are so limited at what we can perceive and understand, and but so I know it's hard for some people to grasp all of this. Um, but once you start
Yeah.
experiencing those things, those doors start opening, and I think for you, your intuitiveness, you're able to connect more easily. You're more open to those experiences now.
Yeah, I heard this medium talk once at an IONS meeting, and she said that we need to sit quietly and look onto a blank wall or into the blue sky, and look from our brow, from our third eye. Let your physical eyes go away, and just do that. And I started doing that, and I started seeing all just amazing beings on the other side looking back. And they say that if you stare into the darkness long enough, you'll see the darkness staring back. And that's the darkness retreats. That's what people are experiencing. If you spend a week in full darkness, your third eye will open and stay open. So these darkness retreats, they last 3 or 4 days, and people get an experience of this opening and seeing the universe looking back at them. All kinds of magnificent beings, things out of a fantasy painting. And so if I walk outside right now and I look in the blue sky, it's like I'm in a snow globe. It's just this darting silver speckles darting in and out. Sometimes they'll like come in real close and they'll come forward and they'll go back and then they'll shoot away. And, those are consciousness. Those are souls that don't have a physical body, family, um, around all of us all the time. And we just don't know it. We're about to rediscover it. And you know, it's going to be cool.
I think, fear holds people back so much from getting to experience these wonderful things, like, you've talked about that, and if we can just let go of this and it's just a part of our our programming from birth, right? I mean, we just in this life, I mean, we watch scary movies and there's mirrors that scary things happen, so nobody wants to go and stare at themselves in the mirror because they think that, something's gonna take over them or, bad things are gonna happen.
Strange things are definitely going to happen. You need to have some huevos if you take on that mirror thing, because suddenly it's not fun and games anymore. You are looking into uh, the divine,
Mhm.
and that's a big that is a big pill to take a bite of. And when you realize, wait a minute, this isn't just movies, sci-fi and Lord of the Rings. This is real, and I'm in the middle of it.
Yeah, that's wild, and I'm all about, just seeing for yourself, just
Yeah, me
experiencing
too.
that. It's fascinating. I've listened to some death experiences where people encountered, they were in blackness and then they saw all these people around them and they realized these are my past lives. And some of them I remember saying they didn't like that as much because they were still kind of identifying with, that either being
Themselves.
one person, it was just kinda almost too much to take at once, and, so I think that's great that you've continued to just explore, consciousness and all of these things. Having those experiences is it just leads to, um, the understanding, we're more than like Robert Monroe always said, more than our physical bodies.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've told that story at um, like meetings, group meetings and stuff, IONs mostly, but I've told that story about the faces changing on people. And, when I get to the point where it's like, the faces change and then it's like turning a page, another face, half the room would just go, and and the other half would be like, I'm not buying that. And that's a mystical, spiritual crowd that's, that's looking out for things like that.
Mhm.
It was too much for them. Well, a lot of people who, not everybody, but a lot of people would react strongly to it. Um, Disbelief or shock or even fear.
Yeah.
But it's who we are.
And so do you do meditation daily?
Most of the stuff that we've talked about
Mhm.
and a lot of things that I do, it was never none of it has been my idea. And all the story about me being in Costa Rica and, it's like I was led. It was like somebody in my head said, "Hey, it's a really good idea to drink some ayahuasca with this tiger shaman from Colombia." And then after it was in full tilt, I was like, "That was a really bad idea." And I remember saying to myself, "You really stepped in it this time, dude." And because I knew I had hours to go before it was gonna wear off. And
Yeah.
I was just in waves of fear. It was coming, every 4 seconds. Terror. And I was laying on the ground, rolling and moaning and drooling, and it went on for hours. And, something in me that, the old fireman or the triathlete was, "Okay, you just gotta keep taking one breath and putting one breath on top of another until you get through this." And, the sun started coming out and the guys helped me. The, shamans and his assistants, they're all wonderful, joyful people. But yeah, I did a lot of things I've done. It's like, what were you thinking? And the point I'm trying to make is I wasn't thinking. I'm kind of a vessel. I'm kind of been led. I totally get it. I really got it when that Shaman Oaks video took off. And it's like, okay, I see what's going on here. For those who are looking for some kind of real answer, there's this story that this guy tells about seeing these joyful little beings on the other side. And, it, like he said earlier, it brought peace and comfort. And I think in the future, the veil is coming down and people are going to see unbelievable things. Um, things like gargoyles and dragons and stuff that are in churches. That's not an accident. That was what people saw back in those days. It didn't make them monsters at all. A gargoyle was a good thing. That's why it was put on the top of a church, to protect it.
Mhm.
Um, but these things are going to be visible to 25% of the population is going to see them soon. So anyway, yeah, I was led to absolutely led to tell these stories. And when I sit quietly, I'm absolutely like I'm taking dictation. It's like, okay, here is how this works. And I, have this whole story and I talk it out and it helps others. And that will build on itself and the world is going back into a knowing stage slowly, centuries. But this is known as the age of heroes in the big cycle of time. And, all my NDE brothers and sisters, all the podcast people like yourself, Katie, are stepping forward. And it is an age of heroes who put the fear aside and say, what's going on here? And where's the high ground?
Yeah.
How can we proceed? And that's absolutely what's happening.
What do we say to, those people who are skeptical still, besides we just give them their space and hope that they find their way, right? Or they have those spontaneous experiences like I have that led me here. For the tall, wispy guy who said you still have things to do, what is it for you? Do you know that yet? Has it come to you, or do you feel
I
like
do.
do you?
Yeah. When we talked earlier, I said that I've got this video thing and it's kind of the overall theme is it's time to remember and to remember who we really are, what we really are. And So my story and kind of how it's gonna flesh out. I mean, I got to record it, and you know how that is. It's I don't know what I'm doing. I'll get
Same.
around to it, and and um, so my story basically is I had this experience, and the NDE 20 to 25% of the people who have an NDE have this experience where they see others, or they are met by otherworldly beings. 80% don't. They're in blackness, and um, they say we're all full of it. But you've had so many lives that you've reached some sort of an essence about you where it's it's an invitation. It's an invitation to look further, to look inward. You're in this group, this 20% group, with your out of body story, and it's up to us to take the invitation. It's right there in the top of the spiritual world is knock and the door will open, seek and you will find, ask and you will be answered. When I was down in Costa Rica and everything opened that night with the faces, it got way worse with all kinds of energy in the sky and stuff. And when I went to sleep, I said, I belong to you guys. There's no question. There's another side. We're being followed. And the whole thing came down for me that night. And I said, I am so grateful. I am so thankful. Everything you showed me. And I belong to you. And whatever you need from me, my schedule's clear. I will be paying attention. And, then this whole thing happened with this star. And it was, this whole Kundalini thing that's unbelievable. But for everyone else, the point is everybody is having synchronicities. They're having things with numbers. They're having intuition. They're having things, there are no accidents. There are no coincidences. We're being led all the time on our adventure. And maybe it's just it's a little intuitive thing that you stop and say, what's going on here? And that is the turning point when you decide to what's really going on here, not join a new religion and learn their book and dress like them
Right.
and and crap on everybody else and
Right.
whatever that's about.
Right.
When you because all your thoughts and emotions are genuinely read on the other side. That's what the big eyeball thing is with the Freemasons and stuff. It's saying that there is a collective universe we call God. It's a consciousness, and it's all those things we've been talking about. And when you make the honest attempt at looking inward, then the door will open. And then when you proclaim, okay, I belong to you, I get it, then the universe takes over and your life changes completely. And it's just on a upward trajectory, and it's unbelievable. That's what we're here to do. We're here to come to the realization that we aren't this single, this separate. We're all the same. We're all connected. And show me more. How can I give back? How can I fit in and give back to the collective? And then we get to leave. That's, we get to fulfill our time here and we get to go back. And we're these really advanced spiritual beings when we do, because we've graduated the Earth School, and the Earth School is the hardest one. So that's my take on
That's
everything.
beautifully summed up, by the way. And then the leaving part, is what so many people are scared of. And we are so we just can't let go of possessions, our things, our bodies, and emotions, like you said. And so when were on the other side, it was just the most free, and like you said, you were let out of like a stuffy, hot closet, and I
Yep.
loved how you said that. So I guess to piggyback off of how you sum that up, if people are so scared about what's to happen, and they just shouldn't be, right? Because the other side is I mean, that's really our home. That's where we all come from. So, and those who, just truly don't believe, then, I guess the ego part of me wants to be like, go find my family or friends who didn't believe me and say, "I told you so," when you get there.
It's just be what I've learned is, just be yourself, just keep being Katie, and they'll come to you because I just see it with my friends and stuff, and, I know this guy, he's a minister. He's like, "Hey, man, I need some help." And, he goes, "What's your take on this?" And I go, "Well, this is my take." And he goes, "That works." And he goes, "I'll take it back to my flock." And so, yeah, just be you, and there is a truth to this place. I think you and I are scraping the surface, and that truth is coming forward. The light, this new earth, this awakening, the light and the truth are coming back into center stage, and, just be that. Just be that light, and everything will come to you.
That's great. Great way to sum this up. And thank you, I mean, really, for not only telling your story, can't even count how many times you've in person and on podcasts and everything, and still more yet to come. I'm sure you'll be telling it again. But thank you so
Yeah.
much. And then if people do want to reach out to you, I know you've said before, like your email is probably the best way to get a hold of you, which I can put in the show notes.
Yeah, I'm available. I'll write back to you, and I just wanna thank you, Katie, for taking that step out of the norm, the mystical spiritual group, they're on a treadmill also.
Yeah.
This is gonna go back to ancient knowledge, which is really almost like magic. It's so out there, crystals and all that, and that truth is gonna come forward, and thanks for taking that step, opening that door for people.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you too. I can't say it enough. And it's just been absolute pleasure to have you here. So maybe we'll catch back up again when you get your video done and out there. We'll have to um, talk about that again.
Yeah, sure. I think people like you are gonna get busy. I don't know, I'm not always right, but I just think that religion and, science and history and the mainstream chatter, which is nonstop, I think all of it is not gonna make sense, and people are gonna be confused, and they're gonna look elsewhere, and it's going to be back towards, the ancients,
Hmm.
The way you lit up about crystals and mirrors, it's like, "Oh, okay, she's clued in." There's a connection there, and, the connection is our DNA is made of phosphorus. That's a crystal that holds light from the other side. That's a signature of our higher self that comes through into this shadow world and is having fun, but everything's fine on the other side. Everything's incredibly cool on the other side. So,
So yeah, people should not. We just have to not be afraid. My goal with this interview, with this podcast, is just for people to expand their awareness and their mind, and also just bring that peace, because there's so much that we're worried and scared of,
oh,
um
yeah.
and so anyway, thank you for taking the time today to help me just spread that message across the airwaves to people, and because you really helped me, hearing your story. So
That's wonderful.
yeah,
That's wonderful.
really.
Makes me happy.
Yeah, so thank you again.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
All right, that's all for today's episode of the NDE Room. A huge thank you to our guest, Bill Letson, for sharing his incredible story and insights with us. And if you enjoyed this conversation, please take a moment to like the show, subscribe, and share it with anyone who you think might find it inspiring. We appreciate you joining us on this journey. And until next time, we'll see you in the NDE Room.